Hello and welcome back to Clownfish TV. It is me, Geeky Sparkles, and it is only me for this episode. Neon is not here. And we are going to talk about comic books, which is unusual because it's not Neon. It is instead me. But we're going to talk specifically about manga, or manga. I say manga. I know it makes people mad, but sorry. We're going to talk about that because I love it. Personally, it's something that I read. I will read them over, superhero comics any day of the week. I also read webcomics a lot, but I come from a webcomic background. So recently, we've been hearing more and more of the media turning around and saying that, hey, you know what? Western comics might not be selling as well as we thought. And manga might actually be kicking their ass. Now, we were saying it before, and people like us were saying it before, and we got called Comicsgate and all kinds of names and told, oh, that's not true. That's impossible. Floppies are selling so well. Graphic novels are selling so well. And then when they bring up examples, it would be crowdfunders, or it would be, like kids' books, kids' versions of novels that are selling through Scholastic or something like that. Sometimes Western comics as a graphic novel format. But they're not performing as well as manga. I'm sorry. They're not. They're just not performing. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I was pleasantly surprised to see CBR do an article about it that I mostly agree with for reasons why it's outselling comic books in the West. I think there are several factors. I think one of the big factors is the fact that you had established characters with superhero comics for years, decades, right? And recently there has been a push to change all those characters. Either they race swapped them, gender swapped them, fundamentally changed some element about them. They've made them change sexual orientation. They keep doing these gimmicky things to appeal to an audience that probably doesn't buy the comics to begin with. And they've lost their audience that have been with them for years and years and years. Another issue we've seen, and this is not just in comics, this is in movies and stuff too, is the fun thing about the manga is that when you read those things, there's good characterization, there's solid character, solid story, and there's usually a struggle. Like, you're not just handed something because you showed up, or you're the race-bent version of a character, whatever. You don't get to be called Rey Skywalker because you said so. There's like a lot of reasons why you've earned, this mantle, or you've earned this thing. Hard work pays off. And I think that resonates with people more than just, oh, they got it because yes, queen, And I don't care if that pisses people off. Neon's not here to temper me. So, you're getting what you're getting. Here's my thoughts on it. Neon's usually much more articulate and business-minded. I just let it fly. So anyway, CBR has done this article by Louis Kemner. I don't disagree with a lot of this. I think this is pretty on the nose for what's going on. Why Japanese manga is outselling American comic books in the West. Okay? Japanese manga is selling incredible in the West, and it seems American comics can't keep up even on their home turf. No, and they haven't been. You guys are late to the party. This has been an ongoing issue that we've been calling out for a while now, and we get so much shit for it. It's ridiculous, okay? For Western graphic novel and comics fans, especially in the United States, there are now two major factions competing on the market. Western comics, like Marvel's and DC's, and then manga. Okay, and everybody has their preference, etc., etc. Everybody's preferring manga. That's the problem, okay? So they're talking about some reasons for this. Japanese manga offers better prices and consumer convenience. That is a valid point. I would agree with this because when you buy a floppy comic, you're paying what is it even now? $3 to $5 or $6 for a floppy comic with 20 some pages. And then you can go buy, a manga book for about $10 to $12 and you're getting 160 to 180 pages. It's black and white, but you're getting a much longer part of a story, a bigger chunk for your money. So it's a better bang for your buck. It's also, I think, a lot easier to find manga because a lot of the floppy comics and even some of the graphic novels, you can get them on Amazon or you have to go to a comic store. But for the most part, you can get manga at Walmart. I mean, I find stuff for my daughter all the time because she and I both will read it. I find it at Walmart often. You can get it on Amazon, other places. Bookstores carry it now. They might not carry the floppies, but they'll carry the manga. They'll have a whole manga section. They're talking about the manga books have been selling well, like My Hero Academia, Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, and they're on the bestsellers list. and they're more mainstream. I think too, because anime is very, very popular now, and especially since we're seeing a lot of these studios and these streaming services are going out to Japan and Korea and places like that, and they're bringing over their shows to here, and they're using them to fill in the gaps because there's a big demand for it. Even Disney is bringing in anime now. So people are watching their anime on these streaming services, and then they're like, oh, I want to go get the books too. Because sometimes they're usually pretty faithful, most often, not always. Fruits Basket looking at you. But they usually are pretty faithful. Contrary to what's going on with the Western comics, is people watch the movies or see the shows on Disney Plus, and they're like, oh my God, I gotta go read the comics. I want to see more. I want to hear more about these characters. And until recent year, and they're starting to make the race bent characters, I mean, it's more so now than it was a few years ago, but you wanted to read about those characters, you go buy the comics and the characters would be nothing like the comic book. They're trying to make their new characters like Riri Williams and all that, Ms. Marvel stick over at Disney Plus or in the movies. But, until recently, if you wanted to go read about like other characters, the movie version and the comic book version are often two different things. Superman, that kind of stuff. So at least with the manga books, you're getting pretty much what you're watching on TV. So you know what to expect, or you can read ahead to find out what happens in your story. So they said they're talking about where you can find them. It's easier to find the manga books than it is the floppy comics, which I agree with. Japanese manga has a low barrier to entry for new readers. Another advantage of reading Japanese manga is the low barrier to entry. At worst, manga suffers from being read right to left, which is different. I used to help run the book fair, the Scholastic Book Fair for elementary schools, and I know the one mom was like, I come in and she has this book in her hand and she's like, I don't know what's wrong with this book. I think it's printed backwards. And she handed it to me and I said, oh, no, it's manga. It's supposed to be that way. And they're like, see, I knew she'd know. But they were convinced it was printed backwards because they aren't used to that. I mean, this is a few years ago. So I'm sure by now they probably are more familiar with it. But it does throw some people off. Okay, there is that little bit of learning curve, how you have to read it. But it's not that big of a deal, honestly. They're talking about how linear and straightforward the stories are, which I think is important. I think people like the stories because they're easy to follow. They don't have multiverse and retcons and all that crap like they're mentioning, which I agree with them. So stories are the stories. But they're very engaging stories, and they have really, really good characters. And, the really popular ones especially, they have a lot of things readers connect with. And I think that Western comics, they cater to a certain demographic that necessarily isn't the biggest demographic they could cater to, and they kind of niche themselves into a corner. It doesn't help that they alienate their core audience too, but hey. But they're talking about basically their two reasons they're giving is because it's more accessible and it's more affordable. And I think that's true, but I think that's only part of the story. I do think a lot of it has to do with the fact that when you read webtoons a lot of people are really popular. Webtoons are really popular. So that's manga and webtoons are very similar. They lend themselves to each other. I think people are tired of superheroes. You have superheroes like My Hero Academia, manga books. But I think in general, the one thing that's great about manga and webtoons and things like that is that you have so many different genres available. Like you have slice of life, you have your comedy, you have your superheroes, but you have like your fantasy and you have action adventure. There's so many different things. A lot of them overlap several different demographics into one. And I think that people want something different. They're so tired of comics only being superheroes. I know we used to do webcomics way back in the day. We used to run into that too, where webcomics, pre-webtoons, people that were reading them read them because they wanted something that wasn't superhero. And yes, you can go to the comic shops, and at the time they were doing much better with the selling of Western comics, that they would go in there and it would be all the superhero lineups. And occasionally you get some fun ones that weren't superheroes, but for the most part it's superheroes, same as now. There are some ones that aren't, but the majority seem to be that way, and that's the mindset. People would love that there was something different, that they could read a comic, but it wasn't about superheroes. And I think that's what's so great about manga. What resonates with people, it's affordable, it's easily accessible, they're characters they can relate to, and they aren't superheroes all the time. I mean, it's really not that hard to understand why they're kicking Western comics' ass. That and the fact that, we have, a market that people who are hungry for something good, and then a bunch of people that were like gatekeeping it, that wanted it a certain way, but they didn't want to give their audiences what they wanted. They wanted to give this mythical audience that was basically themselves what they wanted, but they didn't buy it. And people aren't buying it, which is why they're all turning to these stories. Is every story great? No. But a lot of them are. And the reason they turn them into shows, and the reason they're being picked up right and left by these streaming services, is because there's a demand for them. And I personally like them. I read what I can. I don't read a lot. I usually go watch the anime before I can read the books because of it. But I do buy the books. And I just think that a lot of people need that connection, and they're losing that connection with the films and the streaming services, and they're getting tired of it, and it's getting old. Plus, if you're constantly told you're a shitty person, why are you going to go support those films, those shows, those books? You're not gonna. But you know who's not calling you a shitty person? Mangaka. I'm just saying, if I was going to give someone my money, it's probably going to be them. At least with them, I know I'm going to get a good story, good characters, and you're not going to, kick me in the ass for, afterwards. I just rather read the work of somebody who really is passionate about it and really works hard for it. I mean, not saying that people that do Western comics aren't, but a lot of them spend more time on Twitter than they do actually doing their work. And it's gotten to the place where even people you want to judge people by their work and not by them personally, they've gotten so insufferable that I'm just like, I'm sorry, I can't even separate you at this point. And you just don't get that so much with, stuff coming out in manga form. I don't know. I'd rather have someone who would appreciate my money than somebody who's going to take my money and then tell me I'm a shitty person after I spent my money on them. But that's just me. So anyway, there you go. I'm sorry if it wasn't as interesting as Neon. I'm not usually a comic book person that talks about this stuff, but I do like manga. And I saw this article and I was like, oh, look, I agree with something CBR wrote. And I want to talk about it because I have to do videos today and Neon's not here. So please like and subscribe, and I will talk to you later. Bye.
Pre-order the Clownfish TV comic book right now on Indiegogo. Go to clownfishtvcomic.com. That's clownfishtvcomic.com. This is a fun collection of all new comic strips based on dumb stuff we've said on the show. Again, that's clownfishtvcomic.com. You're gonna have to hurry. We're only taking pre-orders for a limited time. Now we're gonna get back into the show. Help support the channel. Go to thereef.support and get early access to podcasts, videos, and other content. That's thereef.support.